Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on this next Fireside Chat. I'm Parveen Shekhon, Content Director of EduTech India with Terrapin. I'll be in conversation with Dr. S.S. Mantha, former chairman of the All India Council for Technical Education and Chancellor of KL University. We're going to be talking about the need for an innovative approach to university rankings in India. Dr. Mantha, thank you for joining us today. You've had an illustrious career. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your experience?
Thank you, and good morning here, and and good afternoon to React. I am a professional engineer. I did my bachelor's and then the master's program in mechanical engineering from Bombay, and my PhD in combustion modeling way back. Then I went through gained some expertise in robotics, control theory, artificial intelligence. That's what I've been teaching for almost 25, 30 years now. And subsequent to that, I've been also into administration, having been appointed as a Pro Vice Chancellor of SNDT of Women's University, the largest in Asia. And subsequent to that, as chairman of All India Council for Technical Education, where I served for 6 years. So that's a place where probably I have learned the most in terms of interacting with people, interacting with institutions all across the country, understanding the larger education space of space in India, the higher education space more so, and have been through a lot of initiatives while at AICTE, completely computerized the entire place with all the regulatory processes online, and there was no requirement of anyone coming to Delhi for any kind of work. Everything was done online. So that brought in a lot of transparency, accountability, and so on. Subsequent to that, yes, there are a lot of other things that we have done. We have brought in some very effective regulatory framework for skills-based education, which is actually the national skills qualification framework today used within the country. And I have also got a regulatory framework for blended learning, which has actually come to very good use during the time of pandemic. As we have seen, everything had been disrupted, and at least in the applied science area, you can't possibly get everything online. So therefore, a judicious mix of what can be taught online and what is required for building competency-based skills. So that mix is required, and the regulatory framework for that was created many years before. 2015 to be precise.
Wow.
So that's how I have had my journey. There are many other things that I have done, and maybe during the course, if I have an opportunity, I will certainly come back on all that. It has been a great journey, and I still look forward to contributing in my own way. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I think you've seen education from all its angles, which is really incredible. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So I'd like to talk to you about the National Institution Ranking Framework, or NIRF, which was released a few months ago. Can you tell us a bit about your take on the year's results?
Yeah, I mean, the National Institutional Ranking Framework, it was actually launched by the then Ministry of Human Resource Development in 2015, and it's a methodology adopted by the Ministry of Education. Currently, MHRD is called Ministry of Education, Government of India, basically to rank institutions of higher education in India. They can be of any discipline, and to be precise, the 2021 rankings were released about 2 months back in September, and what we found is IIT Madras has topped the rankings in the overall category, while Indian Institute of Science, one of the most premier institutions in the country in Bangalore. It has come second, and which is followed by IIT Bombay at the third place. But if you actually look at the different parameters under which these institutions are classified, I'm sure all these rankings would go, maybe Bombay IIT would come way above in maybe a research parameter, and patents and IPRs and things like that. IISc would fare maybe better in some other rankings and things like that. IISc is also very well known for the kind of research that it does, the basic research and the some applied research. So the rankings, though they are placed in some arithmetic progression, they may really not mean much, at least in those top levels, and probably a grouping would make much more difference. Now, as far as the rankings themselves are concerned, it has been increasing. So there is a increased acceptance within the institutions to go for to be an applicant in the NIRF ranking methodology. It's purely voluntary. And this year we have seen about 6,300 applications, and in all disciplines like engineering, management, pharmacy, law, medical, architecture, the general degree class. The applications were there in all the disciplines. And what it only shows that the acceptance has been much more than what it was in previous years. Right. A little more on my understanding of NIRF is it's basically an experience that should meet the global standards of education, whether it's technical or any other profession. It must enhance, I mean, to an outsider, it must tell the kind of quality the institution brings in, and therefore enhanced employment of opportunities must be there for the students who come out of such institutions. Then there is a general acceptability within the outside world, globally, wherever such rankings are accepted, and so on. So therefore, it also establishes, like, for example, students want loans, grants, and scholarships. So these institutions make a difference there. And therefore, NIRF or any ranking system for that matter is a good indicator, though I don't think any ranking system can ever be perfect. All that can be said is NIRF, as it stands today, is a credible benchmark within the boundary conditions in which it operates. Right. Most of it's based on objective parameters. However, there is there are of course many sub-parameters where some subjectivity comes in. And probably one of the most talked about parameter within the NIRF ranking is the peer perception, which can keep varying across, and how you capture that and things like that. So these are some of my initial thoughts about NIRF. Though there are many good things, probably it's a work in progress, and over a period of time it can improve.
Wonderful. You talked a little bit about the different criteria of the NIRF that it takes into consideration. How do you think this compares to other global rankings?
Now, basically NIRF has all parameters as they look at anywhere in the world. For example, teaching, learning, and resources that are available, research, professional practices, graduation outcomes, outreach, inclusivity, peer perception. All these parameters, generic parameters, they are used in every country for whatever kind of ranking that comes in. Probably the sub-parameters may vary depending on the local conditions and the weightages that you assign, which is extremely important. Weightages that you assign to each of the sub-parameter, that brings in the kind of credibility to any measurement system. While assessing the research institutions, recently NIRF also added two more parameters. For example, the research papers published in journals covered in the first quartile of journal citation reports. They have given a value position to citations that are the immediate citations that a research paper gets, and they have also covered the H index. So these are two good inclusions as far as research institutions are great. That's about the Indian system. Globally, there are at least 20 ranking agencies which measure quality on various parameters. For example, Australia has a research performance index that measures the overall university's performance. For example, the Center for Science and Technology at Leiden University, it maintains a European standard. And it also considers the Web of Science Index publications per year and so on. Now, the QS ranking, Cochrane-Simons World University Rankings, they are annually published since 2004. And to take care of the Asian requirements, in 2009, QS even launched a QS Asian University Rankings in partnership with the Chosun Aibo newspaper in Korea. Now, one must understand the basic underlying dynamics that operates here. There are two parameters. For a long time, it has been said that Indian institutions don't figure in the top 200 or top 150 institutions of the world. There are two parameters on which a lot of concern exists. One is the connect with the industry in terms of the research that is published. It's not somebody coming from the industry lecture. It's a question of how many faculty actually come on the or how many patents are filed along with the industry. What kind of the research output that's made? How is it useful to the industry? Are there products that are developed? Things like that, So those are, that's the first part of the concern. The second part of the concern is the research connect, the industry connect, the research connect, and the internationalization part. How many faculty come to institutions within the country? Do they stay for a semester, for a year, taking a few courses along the way and contributing in terms of research and things like that? So these two concerns are extremely important. And there is also, actually, if you see the world rankings, there is also a ranking of rankings. What this shows is that no one is satisfied with all the kind of different gradings that ranking systems have. So there is an attempt to combine all the ranks together. UniRanks, which was launched in 2017, actually it aggregates 5 rankings, combining them to form a single one single rank. It uses World University rankings, the US World University ranking, US News-based Global University ranking, the Reuters World Top Innovative Universities ranking, and so on, and puts all that together in terms of percentages and creates a new ranking. So which takes at least it clears the differences between different ranking systems that as they are there, and then gives you maybe a more credible way of looking at life. There is also Wuhan University ranking, which is extremely popular. So within the global arena, there are several systems, several ranking systems, which only goes to prove that there is not one single system that can actually, measure the quality of such a complex process where multiple things are there, which go to define education.
Right. Thanks for giving us that overview. I'd like to ask you now, how can we include the skills that an institution or a university imparts to its students as one of the important ingredients?
Yeah, that's a very probably the difficult part of the education system. I mean, an education system that has been prevalent for thousands of years, and if I still, there must be something that we really need to understand. See, my take would be learning is both deductive and experiential. University gives you that learning part, but that experiential part is something that you get on the job. So skills building is something that must realistically happen on the job. There are also certain skills that are that have to be created within the university system. Several universities have different methods. Several courses have an experiential component. Even the deductive part like creativity, ability, logical thinking, reasoning, ability to apply measurements. These are all fine in terms of print. In terms of measurement, they can be really difficult because there are several aspects which are not independent, but they are all dependent on each other, and one affects the other, and therefore measurement can be difficult. Graduates anywhere, anywhere in the world, they must have a good educational foundation, and they must be good at innovation, good at emerging technologies, and they also must connect with the society, with the needs of the public, and so on. So if the education system can provide these kind of skills, it's not purely the hands-on skills. There is a whole lot of ecosystem that has to be created around in order to understand what skills are required. Now if you look at the curriculum, there are program outcomes, there are course outcomes which are described and so on. And it is generally expected that the teaching learning process follows that curriculum and tries and imparts the outcomes as they are written. But that is very difficult to measure, because if you look at like, for example, if you are teaching Faraday's laws, and teaching laws and teaching them with some example is one thing. Applying it to a real-time situation is very, very different. Absolutely. So therefore, what kind of skills are built when I teach somebody Faraday's laws, and how is it to be measured, is something that will need a lot of understanding and research. Now, in order to answer such questions, one must probably move to continuous assessment, and that must be put in place rather than a one-time kind of assessment. Mm-hmm, yes. Now, if you look at one idea that is, based on ABET accreditation, which I would like to say here, is it's a practice of ongoing self-assessment and also continuous improvement. It's not one time peer review that comes in and assesses you, but it's a whole lot of process that happens, and a continuous evolution and improvement is measured. So that probably the way to go in future.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done in the assessment space, like you said. We've been talking a lot about that recently as well. Wonderful. You argue that the NIRF takes a one-size-fits-all approach in a diverse landscape. What steps can it take to widen this approach for greater equity when we're assessing institutions?
See, most of the systems probably are they tend to be one-size-fits-all kind of approach. Yeah. Where I will give you an example here. An Indian reference, whereas Indian Institute of Science, which is an extremely good institution in the country, we are all proud of that. Yeah. It has about 500 faculty, 4,000 students, and has a good student-faculty ratio, and receives about 350 crore grants, and it's a central institution, so it receives central grant. Right. On the other hand, we have Banaras Hindu University, which is also an extremely good university, very old. It has about 2,000 teachers and about 32,000 students, and the teacher-student ratio is much higher than Institute of Science. Yes. And it receives lesser grant than. So therefore, there is a structural difference between, and this is just one example that I've given. For example, we have got some very good government institutions in the government sector, set up by the government, funded by government, maintained and monitored by the government. They're very good institutions, and they all produce engineers who actually build the nation and their requirements. Mm-hmm. But if you look at their financial statement, the grants that they receive are ridiculously low. So my point is, irrespective of what the institution has in terms of resources, they are all made to go through the same process of assessment, and they are assessed for the same outcomes. Obviously, if I have the requisite money, I can build more resources, I can bring back better faculty, I can create better facilities and so on. So therefore, for an institution which is otherwise doing well but is constrained in terms of funds, there is a problem area, and therefore that was the context in which the remark was made.
Right.
See, and globally, if you look at this problem globally, there are major differences in the ranking methodologies used. It's not that they also recognize that there are multiple differences and they must be accounted for. So these differences can be seen in the definitions of what constitutes quality, in the criteria as indicators used to measure quality, in the measurement processes, as well as in the presentation formats. Even there are also league tables given by the media also. You will find in every single journal before admissions how they do the job. So ultimately, it all depends on type of quality, the data that is provided, and the number of the understanding that one has in terms of differences within the institutions, differences within the universities, which must be accounted for, which means you will end up with multiple scales. That is the reason you create multiple ranking systems.
Yeah.
But if you use just one ranking system for measuring everything, then obviously somebody would say it's a one size fits all kind of.
Absolutely.
But NIRF doesn't really do that. It also has subclasses, but then the system is so large that even that smaller unit is big enough in terms of a global perception.
Yes, I think as you said, it's a massive. You just have a huge number of universities and institutions. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been so very enlightening, actually. A really good look into how it is now, how it could be, and what little tweaks can be made, perhaps. Well, to wrap up, I just have one question for you. Can you leave us with some final thoughts on what you hope to see in this space in the short and long-term future?
Yeah, I would see, in order to really make a difference in the global place, internationalization must be promoted. Yeah. For example, we had initiatives such as Fulbright Scholars Program in the United States and Erasmus Mundus programs in Europe and so on. These talked about some amount of internationalization at some point of time, but then the scale of that must be made, it must be scaled up. And with the current labor market requiring graduates to have international, experience, a foreign language, intellectual skills, all these must be happening in terms of internationalization. Now, I would like to see an improvement in student preparedness, internationalizing the curriculum that we are using. I mean, there are a lot of initiatives happening. There are there are companies like Coursera, edX, Udemy who are bringing in quality content, and institutions are using it, but it's not spreading across to the last mile. So that's something that I would want to see. Enhancing the international profile of the institution is extremely important, because in terms of sharing resources, in terms of sharing content, sharing research, sharing publications, it's very, very necessary. Being within a certain boundary, within a certain city, Madras may be very good, Bombay may be very good, but it still puts in a lot of limitations. Unless I move out, see the world outside, the international part happens. So faculty must visit institutions, be here to teach courses semester-wise, year-wise. The students must go there. The research must be strengthened, and the new knowledge production must happen. See, it's very simple to say that a lot of data should convert to information, and a lot of information should convert to knowledge and things. So these are all fine on paper. But how do you make it happen within an institution is extremely important. And they must connect the Indian institutions do not connect to any kind of productization. There are no real-time products that come out of the Indian institutions. So therefore, this is one area which must be seriously looked at. I'll just give you a small example here. In Germany, you have Fraunhofer Society and the Max Planck Society. The Max Planck Society actually, creates basic research, and the Fraunhofer Society institutions, they use basic research and create applied research, and that's how they create products and so on. A great ecosystem is built around these institutions set up by these societies, and that's how the best products come out of Germany. So something similar must happen in this country as well. Now, as far as the accreditation process itself is concerned, yes, finally, all that I can say is there is accreditation, there is assessment, there is ranking, there is quality assurance. I would like to see most of the institutions moving towards quality assurance, where not only you write something in your prospectus, in your documents which describe your university, but you are also seen to be delivering that. Right. Now, that is quality assurance. And in the absence of a delivery of what you have promised, then the stakeholder, the parents, the students, they must reserve the right to sue the institution. That's how the quality can possibly improve, and so on. As a last mark of information, in the US this year, because of the pandemic, more than 70 universities were actually sued by parents and students. And why did they sue them? They have paid for tuition room and board and other costs, and now you are talking of distance learning, online learning. And therefore they are seeking reimbursement on housing, on dining, on on-campus services, and so on. And they're also claiming that the quality of a certification that I have received in an online mode, you prove to me that it's the same as I would have otherwise received in face-to-face mode. Yeah. So these kind of problems would always we would see more and more of them in time to come. But quality assurance probably is the way to go.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a wonderful chat and very enlightening, and I think we've all learned a lot about it. Thank you. I hope to be able to work with you again next time, and thank you so much, Dr. Mantha.
Thank you. It will be my pleasure. Thank you.